Hello and welcome. In today's video I'm showing you how I make my kitchen towels to replace the paper towels you get in your kitchen. They've got toweling on one side and in this case a brushed cotton on the other, but you can use any cotton fabric you like, but don't use a cotton mix. Make sure it's 100% cotton. At the end of the video I've also added my previous sponge and scourer. So I've got all of my kitchen items together in one video. But the new one, the kitchen towel, is the first one. So let's get started.
Cut a piece of fabric 11 inches by 11 inches or 28 centimetres by 28 centimetres and a piece of toweling 11 inches by 11 inches or 28 centimetres by 28 centimetres. Then place your piece of cotton fabric on top of your piece of toweling fabric with right sides facing and then pin together all the way around. Then mark an opening on one side in the middle of about 4 inches or 10 centimetres, starting at one of the marks you made, so all the way around to the second mark, taking a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, back tacking at the start and the finish. Next, clip all 4 corners to about 1/8 of an inch. Cut close to the stitches but don't cut into the stitches. Then turn the right side out through the opening that you left. It's quite easy to turn this the right side out, and then use a pointed object like a knitting needle to push out the corners, or if you have a special tool to do this, then use that. Next, press all 4 sides. I kind of roll the edges a little bit to get them nice and even, and then press with my hot iron. Then I fold under the opening by 1/4 of an inch and press that in place. Then top stitch all the way around about 1/8 of an inch or 3 millimeters away from the edge, back tacking at the start and the finish. Next, fold in half and then fold in half again to find the centre and put a mark in the centre. I'm using chalk for this because I want to be able to rub it off later. My chalk mark is not very clear to see, so I'm also going to put a pin in the centre just so I know where it is. Then I'm going to sew across in the centre just to hold the pieces of fabric together in the centre. So at my machine I sew backwards and forwards a couple of times one way, turn around and do the same thing the other way to make my cross in the centre. Trim off any loose ends and then we're finished. Next, cut a piece of cotton fabric 6.5 inches by 5.5 inches and a piece of hessian or burlap as it's called 6.5 inches by 5.5 inches and a piece of toweling fabric 5.5 inches by 4.5 inches. Use a small round object to draw around to get your corners curved. I'm using a small ginger jar lid, and then cut your rounded corners off. You need to do the same for all 3 pieces of fabric on all 4 corners. Then place your hessian and front fabric together with right sides facing and place the toweling fabric on the top and pin in place. The toweling fabric is smaller, so it should fit inside the other 2 pieces of fabric with a 1/2 inch border around the edge. Then mark off the opening, about a 3-inch gap, and then start sewing from one of the marks you've just made and sew around to the other. You need to take a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, so you just catch in the toweling fabric. So back tack to start and then very carefully sew all the way round. You round the corners because we cut them round, which makes it a little bit easier, but gently sewing all the way round until you get to the other mark where you back tack, and turn the right side out through the opening that we left. I just used the point of my finger to push out the corners because it's very easy to push something through the hessian, so be very careful when you do this. Then turn under your opening by 1/2 an inch or 1 centimetre. You'll notice that the hessian has already started to fray. With a hot iron, press the seam closed and press around all 4 sides, and then pin the opening closed with a couple of pins. Next, top stitch all the way around the edge, about 1/8 of an inch or 3 millimeters away from the edge. I've started at the opening just to make sure I get that neatly closed before I go on and sew the rest of the way around. After your first row of top stitching, sew a second row about 1/2 an inch or 1 centimetre just inside that. Back tack at the start and the finish. Trim off any loose ends and that's our second item finished. For the kitchen sponge, cut 1 piece of cotton fabric 5.5 inches by 4.5 inches and 1 piece of toweling 5.5 inches by 4.5 inches. Then place one piece on top of the other with right sides facing. If you want rounded corners, Use a rounded out item like I'm using to draw round on each corner to round off the corners. Then put one clip or pin on each side and cut the rounded corners off. Then with a fabric pen on one of the longer sides mark about a 3-inch or 6cm opening. Then starting at one of the marks you made, sew all the way round to the other mark, taking a 1/4 inch seam allowance, carefully going round the corners. Take your time, there's no rush, removing your clips as you go along, and then back tack at the end. Next, clip the corners. I like to cut little V's into the corners, but don't cut into the stitching about an 1/8 of an inch or a 1/16 of an inch away from your stitching. Do this to all 4 of your curved corners. Then turn the right side out through the opening that you left. Because you've curved your corners, you'll just need your finger to push out the corners. The toweling does make quite a mess, so I like to clean up as I go along with my little hoover. Then carefully press around all 4 sides and your corners, and remember to turn under the opening that you left by a 1/4 of an inch, and then press this in place. Next, you need to stuff your washing up scrubber, and I'm using a cotton stuffing. It's 100% cotton, and the reason I'm using 100% cotton is because I want it to be biodegradable, but also if you use all cotton, then it's much easier for cleaning your cleaning cloth after use. I'll show you how to do that later. Once you have sufficient stuffing in your sponge, you'll need to close the opening. So I put a couple of clips over the opening that I left, and then at my sewing machine I sew the opening closed. Now if you want to, you can leave it at this and you can just sew the opening closed, but me, I like top stitching, so I decided as it's only lightly stuffed, it would be very easy to go all the way around the edge with a top stitch. So that's what I did, but this isn't necessary. You can just close the opening if you wish. And that's our third and final item finished. And next are the instructions for sterilising your cloths in a microwave. Place your cloth in the microwave and microwave on full power for 1 minute to begin with, and then check after 1 minute. If like this there is steam coming off the cloth, it's done and you can take it out. Once you've opened the door, leave it a little while for all the steam to come out. Then using a pair of tongs, take out your cloth. If it's not done after 1 minute, then put it on for another minute.
Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, could you please like and subscribe? Thank you, and I'll see you next time. Bye.